distant laughter, a light breeze carrying the smell of roasted peanuts and street food, and then Robert Anderson stops dead in his tracks. Right there, in the middle of a crowded city park, his 78-year-old mother is leaning on the shoulder of a homeless teen, a black homeless teen. Her frail hand rests gently on his worn jacket as if they've known each other forever. People are staring. Whispers ripple through the air. Phones hover, recording. But Robert? He's frozen, too stunned to even breathe. "Mom," his voice cracks. What are you doing?" Margaret Anderson looks up with that calm, peaceful smile that only mothers can wear. "Oh, Robbie," she says softly. "Meet Jamal. He's been helping me take food to the others." Robert blinks, confused. Helping her? His gaze sweeps across the bench. Plastic containers, paper bags, bottles of water, sandwiches stacked neatly in rows. His mother, the widow of a wealthy banker, sitting right there among strangers in torn coats and tired eyes. And that boy, barefoot, shivering slightly, stands when he sees Robert watching. "Good afternoon, sir," Jamal says, his voice quiet but steady. The moment is surreal. A millionaire's mother, leaning on a boy with nothing to his name. Robert's instinct kicks in. "Mom, you shouldn't be out here. It's not safe." But she only smiles, the kind that cuts through all the noise. "Safety isn't everything, Robbie. Kindness keeps me alive." Those words hit him harder than he expects. For a moment, Robert doesn't see a frail old woman. He sees strength, the kind money could never buy. And as he looks at the boy again, he feels something he hasn't felt in years. Shame. This was not how things were supposed to be. His mother, his heart, finding peace in a park, not in the mansion he built. The world around them seems to fade. Only three souls remain: an old woman, a hungry teen, and a man finally realizing how empty wealth can feel. But to understand how this moment saved two lives, we have to go back to the beginning. And hey, creating stories this deep and powerful takes time, heart, and real emotion. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, take just a second to hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep sharing the ones that remind us what truly makes us human. Before that day in the park, before the whispers, the cameras, the millionaire's disbelief, there was just a boy named Jamal, 17, no home, no safety net, only a backpack, a faded photo, and a promise he refused to break. He used to live 2 blocks from that same park, back when he had walls, a mother, and a future. But life, as it often does, changed without asking permission. When Jamal was 13, his mom, Angela, worked double shifts at a nursing home. She'd come home exhausted, still smiling, still humming gospel songs as she cooked instant noodles for dinner. She'd always say, "Baby, don't ever let the world make you hard. No matter how cold it gets, stay kind." It was her rule, her only rule, the one unbreakable thing in a world full of broken pieces. But kindness couldn't stop the sickness that came 2 years later. By 16, Jamal was standing beside a hospital bed, holding her hand as machines beat their rhythm of goodbye. Her last words weren't about herself, they were about him. "Don't stop helping people, baby, that's how you'll make it." And then, silence. He tried, he really did, but when rent went unpaid and eviction notices stacked up, kindness didn't buy meals. Soon he was sleeping in bus stops, learning which church steps were safe, which corners stayed lit at night. People passed by like he was invisible, another shadow lost in the city's noise. Still, every morning, he'd whisper his mother's words like a prayer. "Stay kind, Jamal, no matter what." One morning, Jamal found an unopened sandwich on a bench. He didn't know it yet, but that small act of fate would change everything. He hesitated. Was it someone's lunch? But hunger won. As he unwrapped it, he noticed a note tucked inside the napkin. "If you're hungry, it's yours. If you're not, pass it on." He smiled for the first time in weeks. Someone cared enough to leave food without judgment. And so, the next day, he looked for Em. He didn't find her right away. Instead, he found the park, and the people, men in worn jackets, women with plastic bags full of everything they owned. They shared their stories like currency, pain for pain, laughter for laughter. For the first time since his mother's passing, Jamal felt like he belonged somewhere. So he started helping, carrying boxes for strangers, sharing scraps of bread, watching over a sleeping old man so he wouldn't be robbed. Every little act, a way to keep that promise alive. Days turned into weeks, and one afternoon, he saw her, an elderly woman with silver hair tied neatly under a scarf, standing at a park bench surrounded by bags of food. She was giving them away with a smile so warm it melted through the cold air. Her hands trembled, but her eyes, they shone with the same light his mother used to have. He watched her hand out sandwiches one by one, laughing softly, greeting everyone by name. When she dropped one of the containers, Jamal rushed forward without thinking. "Let me help you, ma'am." She looked up, surprised but grateful. "Thank you, dear. These hands aren't as steady as they used to be." That's how it started. No grand moment, no speech, just two strangers, connected by compassion. From that day, he helped her carry boxes, clean up, pass out food. He didn't know she was Margaret Anderson, the mother of one of the city's richest men. To him, she was just Miss Margaret, the kind lady who never treated him like he was less than human. And in her eyes, he wasn't a homeless boy, he was just Jamal. But while Jamal found peace in giving, the world didn't always give back. Some days, police told him to move along. Other days, passers-by left coins with pity in their eyes. Yet, every time he thought about giving up, Miss Margaret's voice echoed softly. "You remind me of someone I used to know, a young man who thought money was the measure of worth." She laughed gently and added, "Turns out, he was wrong." Jamal didn't understand what she meant. Not yet, but soon, he would, because the same kindness that kept him alive would soon be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. If you had to choose one core value, like Jamal choosing kindness over fear, what's the one unbreakable rule you live by? Let me know in the comments below. I'm reading every single one. The day Robert Anderson's life changed forever started like any other. A perfectly tailored morning. The clinking of silverware on marble countertops. A phone buzzing with deals, markets, and meetings. The faint echo of his driver saying, "Car's ready, sir." Robert lived in a world where everything had a purpose. Profit, efficiency, strategy. His empire wasn't built on kindness, it was built on control. Yet somewhere in that steel and glass tower, there was a loneliness money couldn't touch. He didn't know it then, but that emptiness was the reason his mother had started going to the park. Margaret Anderson had once been known for her charity galas, champagne, speeches, and oversized checks. But after her husband died, she found more truth handing out sandwiches in a park than she ever had writing six-figure donations. She never told Robert. He wouldn't have understood. Until that afternoon, Robert had left a board meeting early. He needed air. Driving aimlessly through the city, he spotted something in the park, something that didn't belong. His mother, and that boy. He parked without thinking. What happened next was what we saw in the opening scene, his disbelief, her calm explanation, the quiet dignity in Jamal's eyes. But what came after, that's the part no one saw. After Robert left the park that day, he couldn't focus. Numbers blurred, calls went unanswered. All he could see was his mother's hand, resting on that boy's shoulder, trusting him. That night, he sat alone in his penthouse, the city glittering below like an endless ocean of glass. He poured himself a drink but couldn't bring himself to sip it. "Kindness keeps me alive," her words echoed. How long had it been since he'd done something kind without expecting a return? How long since he'd listened, really listened, to someone who had nothing to offer him? He hated the answer. When Robert returned to the park, he told himself it was just to make sure his mother was safe. But deep down, curiosity pulled him there. And there they were again, Margaret and Jamal, handing out food, laughing like old friends. Robert approached, hands in his pockets. "Need an extra pair of hands?" he asked awkwardly. Jamal blinked in surprise but nodded. "Sure, sir, always room for one more." That was the first time Robert lifted a box instead of signing a check. Day after day, Robert kept showing up. At first, just to carry boxes. Then, to hand out meals. Each time, Jamal greeted him with quiet respect, never asking, never prying. The two men couldn't have been more different. One wore designer suits, the other wore the same faded jacket every day. Yet, working side by side, something began to shift. Robert saw how Jamal treated people, every single person, as if they mattered. Even the ones who cursed, even the ones who took food without saying thank you. He'd smile, nod, and say, "It's okay, everyone's fighting something." It unnerved Robert. He'd spent his life avoiding people who fought something. But one afternoon, while they handed out food in the rain, he finally asked, "Why do you do this, Jamal? You don't have anything yourself." Jamal shrugged, rain dripping down his face. "Because my mom told me kindness is how you survive." Robert didn't reply. He just stared, the rain washing down his coat, realizing that somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how to survive at all. But not everyone appreciated their little mission. Some park officials complained about litter and crowds. One officer even threatened to clear them out if they didn't stop handing out food. Robert tried to reason with them, offered to sponsor a proper station, but bureaucracy moved slower than compassion. One cold evening, As the sun sank and wind bit through the trees, Jamal noticed a man slumped by a bench, one of their regulars, barely breathing. He'd gone without food too long. Jamal ran to him. "Sir, hey, stay with me." Robert rushed over, fumbling for his phone to call an ambulance. But Jamal didn't wait. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around the man's shivering body. The jacket, his only one, the last thing his mother had given him. Robert froze. "You'll freeze, kid," he said. Jamal shook his head. "He needs it more than me." The ambulance arrived, lights flashing red across the wet pavement. Robert stood there, silent, watching the boy who had nothing give away the only thing he had left. That moment broke something open inside him, and something new began to grow. Over the next few weeks, Robert changed. He canceled a business trip. He started funding their food efforts quietly, using cash instead of headlines. He even began asking the names of the people they helped, something his mother had done instinctively. But the turning point came on a night when the city turned colder than usual. Snow, wind, and silence. The shelters were full, and the park was nearly empty except for a few bundled figures under benches. Jamal had spent all day handing out food and blankets until his hands went numb. Robert found him there, shivering beside a trash bin fire, still trying to warm soup for others. "Jamal," Robert said gently, "you've done enough. Go home." Jamal smiled faintly. "Don't have one, sir." Robert hesitated. For the first time, he really saw it, not the humility, not the kindness, but the loneliness behind those eyes. "Come with me," he said. "No, sir, I'm okay. These people need me." Robert shook his head. "And I need to learn from you." He took off his own coat, a $1,000 designer jacket, and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders. Jamal tried to protest, but Robert stopped him. "My mother was right," he said quietly. "Safety isn't everything." They stood there, two men under falling snow, a millionaire and a homeless teen, both finally understanding what it meant to give. The next morning, Robert made a call that would change Jamal's life. He set up a small foundation, not for publicity, but for purpose. He offered Jamal a job helping run it, but Jamal hesitated. "I don't want to take charity, sir." Robert smiled. "Then don't. Help me do what you already do, just with a little more help." Jamal agreed, and from that moment, they were no longer strangers from opposite worlds, they were partners. In that moment, Jamal gave up the last memory of his mother, his only jacket, to save a stranger. The next morning was quiet. The storm had passed, and sunlight glistened on the park benches like tiny mirrors of gold. Jamal woke under the coat Robert had given him, warm for the first time in days. Across the path, Robert stood with 2 cups of coffee, steam curling in the cold air. He handed one over. "Cream and sugar, I guessed." Jamal smiled. "You guessed right." They sat in silence for a while. No wealth, no status, just 2 souls finally at peace. Robert broke the quiet first. "I used to think helping people meant writing a check," he said softly. "But you taught me something my money never could." Jamal looked at him, puzzled. "What's that?" "That kindness isn't a transaction, it's a transformation." For weeks after that, the two worked side by side. Robert kept funding the mission, but now he was part of it, handing out meals, speaking with people, learning names, listening to stories. Word spread, but he didn't care about cameras anymore. He cared about the faces. And one day, when the foundation officially opened, Robert surprised everyone by handing the microphone to Jamal. The boy froze for a moment. He'd never spoken to a crowd before. Robert whispered, "Just tell them the truth." Jamal nodded, took a deep breath, and said, "My mom used to say that kindness is how you survive. I thought she meant it just for me, but I think she meant it for all of us." The room fell silent. Somewhere in the back, Margaret smiled, proud, peaceful, knowing. Months turned into years. The foundation grew, new volunteers, new shelters, new stories of hope. Jamal worked harder than anyone, not because of the paycheck, but because he'd finally found a purpose. And Robert, he'd never felt more alive. He'd traded boardrooms for soup kitchens, deals for dinners shared under bridges, and power for peace. One evening, as they closed up the food stand, Robert said quietly, "You know, Jamal, when I first saw you, I thought my mother had lost her mind." Jamal laughed. "You weren't wrong, sir. I thought she was crazy too." Robert smiled. "Turns out she was the only one who saw clearly." A few months later, Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep, her hands folded, a gentle smile still on her face. At her funeral, Robert gave the eulogy, but it wasn't about loss, it was about legacy. He told the story of that day in the park, how a mother's trust and a boy's kindness changed everything. And when he finished, He looked straight at Jamal sitting in the front row and said, "She didn't lean on him because she was weak. She leaned on him because she recognized strength, the kind that doesn't need money or titles, just heart." Tears filled Jamal's eyes. He'd never had a family at that table before, but that day, he realized he did now. The city had changed, and so had Jamal. He was no longer the boy in tattered clothes. He stood at the head of a small non-profit office, now dressed neatly, photos on the wall showing volunteers handing out food, families smiling, lives rebuilt. The sign outside read, "The Margaret Foundation, kindness keeps us alive." Robert walked in, older now but lighter, freer. He looked at Jamal with quiet pride. "You've done good, son." Jamal smiled. "Couldn't have done it without you, sir." Robert shook his head. "You did it because of you." There was a pause. Then Robert said something he'd never said before. "Jamal, I never had a son, but if I did, I'd hope he'd grow up to be like you." For a long moment, they stood there, two men who had once been strangers, now bound by something stronger than blood. Sometimes, the richest man in the world isn't the one with the biggest house, but the one with the biggest heart. Because on that day, when a millionaire saw his mother leaning on a homeless teen, he thought it was a moment of shame, but it turned out to be a moment of grace. It wasn't just the day his mother leaned on Jamal, it was the day he finally leaned on kindness, and in that quiet exchange, both found what they'd been missing all along, a reason to believe in people again.